Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in.
Hello, my guest today is Arnaud Saint-Paul, founder of Tapuat and GIVE Nation. Arnaud is a conscious technologist, philanthropist, author, and visionary, and has a life goal of inspiring 1 billion people to open their heart to themselves. Hi, Arnaud.
Hello, Jen. How are you?
Good, and good morning to you.
Good afternoon to you. The beauty of
Uh,
technology and Earth to have so many time zones.
That's right. That's right. And to add on to that, fun fact, Arnaud is actually my first guest on Curito Connects, in which your team reached out to me to share your story. And compared to many other guests on my show who thus far I've actually personally invited. So this is the first time it's a reverse role, again, thanks to technology. And so I'm excited to learn how 10 years ago, Arnaud's own experience with the Heartful method led him on a personal journey in which led him to the work he does today. So without further ado, I will let Arnaud take the floor and start us off by introducing yourself to our audience and to myself too. And where were you in your life prior to discovering Heartful method?
Okay, so my professional life has been starting in finance and then went into the technology world, creating startups in Europe and in the US. At the same time, since about the age of 13, I started on that journey of understanding who am I. That was my obsessive question, and I went deep. I went deep into the different practices, the Western philosophies, the Eastern ones as well, and also reading a lot the different religions books. And out of that, I started to have a better idea of what is it that human experience we're having. At first, I didn't necessarily formulate it that way, but that's what happened. Anyway, so for a long time, I had these two experiences. On one side, being an entrepreneur, creating companies, spreading them out in different countries. And on the other, I had that other journey, which was to help people rebirth to themselves and find their own path, their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's how emerged that Heartful method that I'll get back to later. And yes.
Oh, I like how you caught me like my mouth slightly open, wanting to ask a question. So I want to just go back to 13-year-old self of you, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit like what kind of household were you raised in? And out of curiosity at 13, what kind of questions like were you asking yourself, right? Out of, in terms of in that
Really?
mindset, and were the adults kind of going like, oh, just go to your studies. Why are you asking all these questions? And what first book did you pick up that you're like, this is so fascinating, reading different philosophies?
Yeah.
Did you at some point go on a eat, pray, love journey in your teenage years as well? You know how a lot of people end up in India. There's that common storyline. What was it for you?
No, I wish. No, that wasn't that grand. So 13 years old, I'm in the middle of France, and basically born. I was raised in the country, so in the middle of the forest. And the incident or the moment, right, that from which stemmed all these transformations when I was imposed to go to church. And for me, God was everywhere. That was self-evident. There was no question about having to go to a special place, right? And so all the different constraints and processes that was created around that approach to that spiritual self or spiritual being that the Christian and the Catholicism offers, well, did not make sense to me. And so started from there. many different insights that I would discover in books 5, 6, 7 years afterwards. And very quickly, I started to help other people that were having their own challenges in their lives. And we're talking about teenage years, right? So you can imagine what it would be. And it's only when I started to be in Paris when I was 17 that I would start to study the Bhagavad Gita, the different Zen works that were available at the time. And again, in all these books, I would find things that would be totally evident to me, but I didn't have it formulated necessarily, but it was there. Now it was like in a book. I remember that book, Conversation with God by Neil Donald Walsh, that also um, helped me to understand on what path I was, right? Because you have that question, who am I, which was again very obsessive to me, and and for that I read many French authors that I won't cite here because nobody knows them here, but so it was a search, right? And to be able to, but you never know exactly what is the actual path. You're just obsessed by this, right? And then to be able to see through different books that have a big following, that okay, you are on that process of discovering yourself and then becoming a bigger version of yourself, rebirthing to yourself, right? It became a kind of a lifestyle, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
where you start to live the experiences you're going through as a step towards yourself, as
Mm-hmm.
steps on the journey towards yourself. And it's not anymore about the actual event itself, right, or whatever that is, but more that dance that you are having with that reality that is around you, and
Mm.
that helps you to uncover, unveil who you are. And that's the
Great. That's a good foundation to transition into my next question, which is while you were doing all this reading and this discovery, right? You said at 17 you dug yourself into these different books. How did you end up choosing to go into the finance world?
well,
Right? Like I was gonna say, oh, maybe you decided to study philosophy, or right, like as you because you're very curious about this topic and asking a lot of questions, but at the same time, you chose to go down the
yeah,
financial path, right?
yeah,
And do your
indeed.
studies, integrate yourself with other people in the financial institution who I guess I'm stereotyping here, but for the most part, most of them, and when you're young and you're starting off, you don't think about all this philosophical question. You're just like trying to get into the big firms and trying to clock in those long hours, right? So, curious as to how you tried to balance that, and were you just kind of like, okay, this is like my side hobby. This is what I do on my downtime. But in the morning when I wake up, I put on my suit. I go onto the trade floor or whatever it was you were career
Yeah,
path wise then.
on the trade floor,
Yeah.
definitely. I, you know, life is a gift, and every moment is as well. And frankly, it just happened. It was not necessarily a choice. I mean, obviously, it was a choice in the end, but it just was offered to me, and I took it. And this is a new experience, right? So,
Mhm.
funnily enough, the anecdote is that when I was in the finance world, my nickname was the Bishop, which kind of makes sense. But yeah, so, and interestingly enough, also at that time, finance was a sector or world made of abundance, right? Which is our nature. When you go into the other sectors, compared with finance, they are more in scarcity mode. And at that time, we could have dinners with, you could spend $1,000 on a dinner, wasn't an issue at all, etc. Anyway, big parties and all that stuff. So it was great to start that as as a youngster. I started at 18. I was on the floor, and it only lasted me a few years because in the end, for me, in any case, it was kind of okay. So what? I want to create. I just don't want to do these things all the time, and so that's how I started then my entrepreneur journey, and never left it really since then.
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
what
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so what, when you made that jump and that juncture and the choice of saying, all right, no, like I'm not going to stay in the institution of finance and head into the entrepreneurial route. In your mind, were you pretty sure of, in terms of what you wanted to create, right, as your foundation in terms of the companies you were going to create, what kind of messaging you wanted to spread, how you wanted to change the world, or was it again just kind of like luck?
It was a choice. That I had a total clarity on what I wanted to do. No, it would be preposterous for me to say that. I knew that I didn't want that anymore. Number one, which is already something, right? And then that I wanted to create. I wanted to create something that makes sense to me, right? That's something that would, in that case, it was the beginning of the internet, so it was prior to the internet actually. So in telecom, I was at the first, and it's that idea of being able to create something of value that others could use. So I was not there yet in that process of merging my spiritual self with my business self. So I was learning the rope, right? That would come a lot later, many years after. Well, about 10 years ago or 15 now. So yeah, it was a while ago.
So in a nutshell, could you kind of share with us that transitional period where you were kind of a serial entrepreneur, and that, that period of what were you doing, and the different kind of industries you ended up helping out or participating in, and then that switch, right, like you said, 10 to 15 years ago,
Mhm.
where Heartful Method was
Be-
created.
Become.
And I guess between, like you said earlier, your spiritual path and your entrepreneurial path, and how that kind of, at what point did it
Yes,
merge?
yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I went into telecom, I went into logistics. I even sold eyeglasses on the internet, subscription eyeglasses on the internet, importing them from India, sending them to Europe. Anyway, a lot of fun things. But it's about, so, within that journey of understanding who am I was still on that journey as well. So on one side, I was doing these activities, creating software and building up, finding investors, and the whole thing. I won't describe you the process. Everybody knows it. At the same time, I was still figuring out, who am I? Why is this happening, etc. So trying to decipher how I came to be me and what am I to become, right? Who am I to
Hmm.
choose, who I may be in the future, and so continuing my journey of understanding these different religions, practicing yoga, Zen meditation, etc. And about year 2000, I started to discover energy healing for me, meaning finding practitioners that would work on me and help me to let go of past blockages and traumas and whatnot. And that worked wonderfully. It was
Oh,
amazing. It was super fast.
so
Wow.
I'm glad you found the modality that worked for you. And now I'm curious to ask just a little deeper. What
Yes.
do you think for you was the biggest blockage?
Well, that's easy. It happens that when I was born, there was a series of incidents, and that really put an imprint on the way I mean, that's most likely what helped me to become aware at the age of
Mm,
13. So, and that has carried out its imprint until a few years ago. So,
Oh, so
uh,
can we talk about that
yeah, sure.
imprint?
I mean, well, the imprint itself might be tricky, but the actual physical circumstances were that I was going to be born in a natural way, and it couldn't happen. And it happened that the obstetrician had chosen a clinic that did not have all the facilities to do a C-section and all that stuff. So started to get some complications, and I was born then, but I couldn't see my mother for about a month. So there was here for the baby, right, a lack of connection. And so that helped me to be more connected in other ways, most likely.
Mm.
And also created several, how would I put it, a distortion related to between that young boy and on with the feminine, the
Yeah.
idea of the feminine, the archetype, the feminine archetype.
Mhm, mhm.
So, and it's only a few years ago now that all that disappeared. So it's very interesting because uh,
Mm.
obviously, when you are in it, right, you don't necessarily know what it is.
Yes, yeah.
I was able to discover it after a few years, and then my mother told me, etc. But it's it has an impact on absolutely everything, right? And
Yeah,
it's really fascinating, and you don't necessarily know what is the outcome, what's the destination. You just know that you're continuing on, and one step at a time you get somewhere. You don't know where,
yeah,
but you're going somewhere anyway.
yeah.
And so working with these energy practitioners, I was able to chip out, again, it was not necessarily formulated that way, but at the time, but chip out some aspects of this big thing that was hampering my growth, so to
Right.
speak.
Mhm.
And and so I started to work with Reiki and all that stuff. So quickly came from using it on myself, having a practitioner do it on myself, to becoming myself a master, and then building on that and creating my own techniques and whatnot. That was when I was living in Spain, and so that helped me to really outgrow myself really quickly, entering a world where the moment I'm able to have an internal shift about something, it started to reflect directly into my physical world, into
Oh,
reality,
yeah, yeah. For
and
sure, for sure.
into what we could call quantum reality or whatever. But the bottom line being understanding once and for all that all the belief systems that I carry are always reflected in my reality. Therefore, if I choose something else, a new belief system, for instance, a more expensive one, therefore, it automatically opens up into my world. And
Mm.
and that I discovered helping other people because I had a practice then, and on the side of doing my entrepreneur work, and at the same time using it for them and for myself, uh, which brought me to a place where I started to really, when I was 13, I started to have presence to myself, right? There was the human presence and the eternal presence inside, right? The with a presence with a big P, or self, if you want to.
Yes.
And each moment started to become, both started to become more real, in essence, and uh, and therefore opening up my heart to all that I am, opening up to all that is around me. So
Mhm.
where love becomes the only way of expression that I choose and can have in my reality, in my day to day.
Mhm.
And uh, and so thanks to this journey, I was able to help more and more people faster and faster, and
Mm.
which led me to, uh, when I was in the US, to create a company which purpose was to help people to heal through words, and so creating positive memes and reaching out to millions of people with that. And so that was the first instance of that life purpose discovery, which was to help 1 billion people to open their heart. And that was the first instantiation, I would say. And at the same time, the process of on that journey of myself and helping others, of course, because I had clients at the same time, started to emerge charts, drawings that will help me understand how this human experience is being had. How, if I look at the eternal or higher self and the I, and to how together do they blend to create that space in which I am,
Mm-hmm.
and that I can let go of its obsession for the mind and get into the heart, right, into its own love. And so nowadays I have 160 charts that helps a person to go from his mind to his heart in 90 days. And it's more about the experience than the knowledge, but nevertheless we still acquire knowledge in the process. And it's magical because if the person allows to rewire completely their relationship with their reality, with themselves, a bit from what we talked earlier,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden he or she enters a world where every single moment is an opportunity to love themselves more. Every
Mm-hmm.
single moment is an opportunity to live a magical life, one that is made of abundance. It's made of balance, of peace, and of love. In the end, that's the only thing that we are, right? So, but for that to happen, we have to, you know, dare to change, or to allow that change and learn
Step
the
one.
tools. Excuse me?
Step one. That's step
Step
one.
one. Oh yeah, big step one.
Yeah, big step one.
More so if we are an entrepreneur, because super important in that case. And then allow that change to happen. Acquire the tools, which are super simple. And so it's like having that visual map of, what's consciousness, how it works, how does it really works, and go from there and have our own journey, because every journey is different anyway. It's just I'm just here to share my experience, what works for me and for the people that work with me, but that's it.
Mm. So I was curious because earlier as you was explaining this, you said, "Who am I?" So I was
Yes.
wondering, for you in this whole process, and you beautifully illustrated, thus far what you've gone through. What were some of the examples of like who am I, in terms of like, during those different stages as a uni student, as a finance guy, as a, serial entrepreneur, as someone who was seeking spiritual awakening and of just really figuring out like who am I? So like of the different hats you wore during those different periods of like questioning, yeah, like who am I? Like what kind of life do I want to live? Right. And then when you had that energy healing work done that really, I guess like created an aha moment for you of alignment of like, this is who I am. Like if you could kind of share with us
Yes.
or give us examples of some, of like, I'm sure maybe if we met you 20 years ago, it would have been a little bit of a different Arnaud than the one we meet today.
Big
Right?
one. Big
So,
one. It's an excellent question, and hmm, a very good question. You shared a word that is very important in the work I do, and I think we need to take a moment on that. It's alignment. So uh, im- I see our lives like a tuning fork or a string on a guitar, for instance, that is always seeking its own alignment. It's always seeking to be the finest tune possible, so that it can express that note in the most beautiful way. Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
At first, we don't know. At first, we figure out, if I go on the right, would that work? If I go on the left, would that work? And maybe there, and we're doing our best with the tools we have to be the best version of ourselves, at least for the ones that have chosen to want to be the best version of themselves, right? Which is already a step by itself. And I
Yes.
was clear on that one, fortunately. Although I'm not sure I have been succeeding all I could, but at least that was the purpose I had, right? So to give you examples, what I was trying to convey here is that even though I had that obsession of who am I and understanding myself, understanding the others, etc., I was not necessarily totally clear on what should be my next action and my next action, etc. It's still like driving in the fog. You kind of know. I mean, and nowadays we have roads, so it's super easy. But imagine you are in the countryside and you're in the fog and you're trying to figure out what's the path. You don't have necessarily an idea. So I guess we can akin our lives, or at least my experience of life, in that way as well. You roughly know what's the destination. It's a bit like a sailing a boat. You kind of know you want to go to New York from France, for instance, but then the wind, the currents, and the sun and the rain will lead you through different paths. You don't necessarily know. And again, it's a journey. It's a holistic journey. It's not a mind driven journey. It's not putting rails in the ocean and you go straight to New York, and obviously the rails would break, right, in the process. So it's a holistic journey, that where reality is there to help to guide you. And so to get back to the examples you were seeking, the so I remember one time, thanks to life, it brings you, as you were saying earlier, to a certain crisis that tells you, okay, what's happening here? Why is it happening that way, etc. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have that inner reflection of saying, okay, what's the source of this? Not the actual event or whichever reaction was it coming from, but more the underlying belief system that was playing out through that event. And so that helped me to get into a place where I could reborn to myself, changing an octave from one octave where I was stuck, right? And hence the crisis, to a new one where I could breathe again,
Hmm.
create a new symphony out of it, and,
Hmm.
uh, and starting anew with a different set of belief system that would most likely not repeat themselves, right? Where the same situation would not continue on because I've left these traumas. Yes.
So how did you do that switch? Like, for some people it's like it might be like they sought a therapist out and the therapist guided them in a way where they, would make necessary changes. For some it might be they uh, you know, yoga is very common. I feel like these days, people say they started a yoga practice and they were able to shed the onion layers and they were able to make that switch. So for you, was that the energy healing that you mentioned earlier, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which period of life, right?
Mhm.
In my 20s, I started psychotherapy that helped me for 2 or 3 years. Then I had meditation and yoga.
Yep. Yep.
In the year 2000, I had these energy healing sessions that helped me a lot as well, and kinesiology as well before that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I was helping the support of different practitioners
Yeah.
But very quickly, once I discovered energy healing, super quickly, like in a year or two, I I didn't need them anymore, and I
Hmm.
started to have that capacity to really let go, because in the end, it's a choice. It's a very simple choice. It's You were talking about alignment earlier. Here we're talking again about alignment and integrity in that alignment, meaning I can choose to, I don't know, to, a belief system, and decide, no, I don't want this anymore, I'm choosing that.
Yeah.
If I am
Yeah.
in pure alignment with myself, it just happens, it's
Yeah.
instantaneous.
Yeah.
Because that concept of time in any case is construction, so it's an illusion. So quickly, as I was saying earlier, I did not need anymore to have these catalyzers, that amazing
Hmm.
catalyzers that are practitioners, and was able to find within me these tools that would become the Heartful Method nowadays, to connect with the higher version of myself. Yes.
So, from that, can you educate us about Heartful Method?
Yes. So,
Right, because in a nutshell, basically, it's your years of experiencing and applying these different modalities to yourself, and you're a real example, right, of all these different things
yes.
you tested and you tried and you aligned yourself, and then you created Heartful Method, which worked for you and your clients. So could you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it's different from other modalities? And normally who seeks you out for your services and consultation? And yeah.
Yeah, with pleasure, with pleasure. So the Heartful Method, its purpose is to find harmony within. It's to find that alignment we're talking about earlier. It's to experience more balance, more peace, more love for oneself. And I'm talking not only at, privately and with the person you love, but also business wise. It has a direct implication from a business standpoint. And I've seen it so many times over and over. Uh, the Heartful Method itself came together in the past 30 years, and one chart at a time, all of a sudden it shows up, and they start to put it together, and at some point it becomes something coherent. It actually has a purpose. I didn't know. Anyway,
Hmm.
and today it's 12 sessions, and we go through them. It's about half an hour, 45 minutes each, and then we have the same time to go over what happened throughout the week. And in the end, hopefully, the person has really completely given 180 degrees direction change, and has acquired a higher understanding of herself. And so, if the person is already on a spiritual path, it will help to hasten her growth.
Hmm.
And if the person is not already spiritual, they are going to have a kickstart that is going to be really quick. the the outcome of the method itself is really to step in that world where reality is a function of I, where when I change a belief system, it automatically has an impact on the reality I live in. Hence, I get into that space where I become aware of myself, where I become present to myself, and I can live that I, human, and that self, ethereal or eternal, at the same time. And helping me to let go of identification to all these things, these beautiful things that happen in my reality,
Hmm.
and recenter myself to what is eternal, or what is essential, what is unique, what is simple, what is harmonious in my life.
Hmm.
So that's the beauty of that Heartful Method. Usually I work with CEOs, and I mean, it's open to everyone, but usually CEOs seek my help. And then I become advisor of the company, and the company grow a lot faster thanks to that, which is, super
you're
happy.
you're the lucky charm.
maybe, maybe I am. And so, yeah, now the Heartful Method is the 160 charts, and then there's a book I published at the end of last year called I, which is the journey of I towards itself, and it's 66 paths towards more harmony that anybody can read and experience another aspect of themselves through these words. And
Mm.
so it's another tool, and there will be more down the road, of course.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
So, can I ask really quickly, what is Tapao your main thing now, or because you also
Tapuat,
have Give
Tapuat,
and Tapuat, yeah, and also Give Nation,
GIVE Nation,
and
yes.
do you also do other things on the side besides consulting companies? Because you've done so many things. Where are
Uh,
you currently putting your energy at?
right now, I'm focusing my energy on spreading that message of harmony is our birthright, and it's time for us to embrace it.
Hmm.
Because of the current situation, I think it is important to share that message wide and far. And I do have that other activity, which is Give Nation, which is there to help children to practice empathy, compassion, altruism. It's again in the same purpose of my life purpose, right? Helping 1 billion people to open their heart. But here I'm looking at a generational change, if I can, if it is allowed to me. And but so most of my work is really spreading out that message of harmony, because we can. It's time. It's time for everybody to embrace that. It's all our gift, and it exists in the simplicity of our hearts. We tend to
Hmm.
complexify things a lot. So why? Let's change that. And and if I can help on that process, I would be very happy. Whether it is through the content that we share now, or any other means, it's okay. But so yeah, these are my two main activities
Two
nowadays.
main activities. Okay. And so for those who are listening and resonate with your story, do we just send them to your website or
Yeah,
to Amazon to buy your book? Like how else to get in touch with you?
I guess the simplest method would be you go to tapuat.com/harmony, where you can subscribe and you receive a 12-minute workshop on 3 ways to find harmony, which, is totally on topic. And then there you can have access to the book and all that stuff with all the links that are necessary for to go deeper, right?
Hmm.
Tapuat.com, tapuat.com. And
Okay. Yeah, I'll put all of that in the episode resources so people can click on it
amazing,
and follow
amazing.
on social media. So usually well, actually, I want to ask really quickly. You said three methods. So and just in bullet points, what are the one, two, three? We don't have to go into details, but it could just be like, acceptance and, alignment and,
You already know it.
oh,
uh, the, uh, the first step, so 3 ways to find harmony within. It's more of a process. The first step is to be now, and that's where most of us fail. And because we tend to be, whether in the past, in the future, both, and
hmm.
we want to be elsewhere. We forgot that we do have a body, etc. So just to be here now. So that's the first step, because transformation can only happen there, now.
Yeah.
Love can only be in that now moment, nowhere else. So let's start with that. It's
Hmm.
super simple, right? It's
So
so
hard.
so.
Easier said than done. Easier said than done.
Yeah. Then again, it's us that are we are putting the complexity on top. So let's strip ourselves of it. So that's the first step. Second step is acceptance, as you said. It's accepting what is in this moment, whatever is expressing itself in this very moment, just accepting it as is.
Yeah. I think we need that more nowadays too, with the world, the pandemic
Yes.
world, right? Like
Yeah.
wherever you go, you just accept it. Flights are delayed, they're canceled, accept it.
Accept it, and do not judge on top of it. It's just what it is. Okay, great. And at the same time, surrendering to it. That's a very important step there on the back of it, because, or sub step in this case, because if you don't surrender to what is expressing itself, whatever it is that you may have been a worried about at some point, but you're not anymore, well, by surrendering to it, then you allow potentials to happen again. And more so if you get to the third step, which is compassion. Compassion, maybe for the others, if there were others involved, compassion for yourself, for having that situation in your hands in this moment, and loving you for whatever led you to that special place. Compassion for, if there were discussions, angry discussions or whatever, compassion for the whole process, compassion for that person that is judging you, compassion for you judging the other person, etc. So, in other words, opening your heart to yourself. And
Mm,
that is magical if
mm.
we allow it.
If we allow it. Yeah, that's right. Oh, thank you for sharing the three methods. I felt like that you just kind of. I usually ask my guests towards the end of our conversation if you were to, uh, what would you tell your younger self? Now that you know what that process looked like or what it took, or for what would you say to other? I guess I mean you do this all the time, but your clients, your CEOs, your startup founders, anyone who resonates with your story. What would you say to them? As in, like Arnaud's 2 cent, words of wisdom.
2 cent, 2 words: be patient
Be
with
patient.
yourself. With yourself. And yeah, and take yourself by the hand. And it's not that difficult if we allow it.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be that difficult,
Yeah.
but it's a
Yeah.
choice. I mean, we love so much to struggle and hustle, and it seems to be so fulfilling, but it's such a loads of noise that does not necessarily need to be there. There is another way. There is a way
Hmm.
of led by one's heart, where there is a process I do with entrepreneurs sometimes, which is to help them find their heart vision. So what is the reason why they came into this life, and what is that tuning fork of theirs, what's
Yeah.
their note. And once you know that, it starts to become much simpler, because it, it's for up to you to ease yourself into whatever is the journey, instead of
Hmm.
trying to do this and this and that, which
Yeah.
is more feminine. It's a more feminine approach than masculine, but that does not deny in any shape or form your masculinity at all, if we're talking to guys. And for ladies, it should be natural, and it's
Hmm.
not sometimes.
Right. Right. Especially now with the whole, pushing the glass ceiling, and women can have it all as well. And
Which is
yeah, so
true. which
which
is
is
true.
true.
which is true. Maybe a bit different, right, than what they believe it could be, in the sense that the society is bringing to them an image of which is more masculine than feminine
Yep.
nowadays. And so it's time also for that woman to look at what it is really, in her essence. What is it that she
Yep.
wants? Is it a reflection of a masculine reflection, or something different? Where is her value? And that's a whole other story.
That is a whole other story for another conversation. And
Yeah.
lastly, I always ask my guests to, what keeps you grounded, right? So, and what kind of books would you recommend to our audience? Obviously, beside your book, if there's others that you often recommend to other people to read,
Uh, the the books, there are many books, and it depends really on the the
on the person. Yeah.
person's journey. I mean, Conversation with God is a great book. There is one book that was really important for me, but when I was in my 20s, but still valid today, is Who Am I by Ramana Maharishi. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a collection of his talks that was really essential for me. But these
Mm-hmm.
are rather advanced book, and maybe not everyone would like them. And
Mm-hmm.
what else?
Oh,
I,
and then what
yes.
keeps you grounded?
What keeps me grounded?
Yeah, like, or what do you do to keep yourself grounded? Like when you're super stressed, or when there's life throws you lemonades, or just you make lemonade. But when stuff, yeah, when you're on another, when you get kind of sidetracked a little bit, how do you kind of
Right,
collect yourself
right, right,
again
right.
to stay
I,
grounded?
so I'm fortunate enough to do meditation every day, and obviously it's a choice, but and thanks to the practice, I the practice in general, right? I don't necessarily need a special technique for that
Hmm.
anymore. However, the what I suggest to people sometimes is to check on themselves every hour or so and see. Well, ask them that question: Who am I now? That would be a very interesting answer, right? If we want to have clarity on ourselves, and what role am I fulfilling in this moment? What am I identified to, and all that should help us to ground ourselves quite fast.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap up our conversation. We're going to leave the listeners with that question: Who am I now? And like I said earlier, I'll leave all the links so people can link back to you and the work you're doing, and reach out if they want a session, or
Yeah,
ask more questions. But
for
this
sure.
was super fun. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much. The conversation was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.